An estimated 15.5 million U.S. adults have ADHD. That's according to the Centers for Disease Control, with 1 in 3 adults with the disorder taking stimulant medication for it. But for the majority of those walking around with ADHD, it's proven difficult to get a diagnosis and even more difficult to fill their prescriptions. Tonight, we take a deeper dive into the disorder and look behind the numbers to the everyday people living with it, one of whom anchors this very channel. Our Diane Macedo has more in the second installment of our series, Inside ADHD, as she explores her own diagnosis.
I really just thought, oh my gosh, I am so broken right now. What? Like, something is dreadfully wrong with me.
At 42, Raquel Gonsalves-Lubbers says she felt her life was at a crescendo of difficulty. She'd been struggling for decades with overwhelm, chaos, and at times suicidal ideation. But despite years of complaints, her doctor's answer never changed.
It had always come back to anxiety and depression. They're so hard. It's so understandable. You're such a perfectionist and an overachiever. Who wouldn't be experiencing these things?
But Raquel soon found the rest of her family was struggling too. And after calling multiple providers, shelling out more than $7,000 and waiting months for neuropsych evaluations, they finally learned they all have ADHD.
So it took you 5 months from when you suspected you and your kids might have ADHD to when you finally all got diagnosed.
Yeah, it came with relief, and then it came with anger. Like, why didn't anyone find this before when I had tried to get help?
Part of the problem is the criteria to diagnose ADHD were developed for boys, but those symptoms often look very different in adults and females.
In general, adults have more of the inattentive symptoms than the hyperactive impulsive, and that is more true for women than for men. If you ask, do they run about and climb, you're not going to get a positive answer on that commonly. But if you ask them, are they always busy doing more than one thing at once, even when they're trying to settle down, that's really where you'll get positive answers.
That often leads to women being misdiagnosed, which Linsey Davis says happened to her after working on a writing project involving a character with ADHD.
I started doing some research about what ADHD looked like for someone in their 30s, specifically a woman in their 30s. I was like, oh, this sounds like me, this sounds like me, this sounds like me.
Linsey's doctor recommended she see a neuropsychologist, but it took weeks just to get her calls returned.
Once they called me back, they didn't take my insurance, and so I found another person, and that person did take my insurance, and by the time that person called me back, found out that they don't do ADHD testing. I was in sort of a loop for many, many months.
6 months later, Linsey finally got an appointment, but immediately she felt dismissed.
I felt like I was being challenged to prove that I had ADHD. And, you know, I missed that day at med school.
Did she ask you questions about your past, questions about childhood and evidence of symptoms then?
No. This woman told me that I should really just start calendaring what was going on in my world. And I've been keeping a calendar since I was a teenager.
Without a full evaluation, the psychologist told Linsey she was likely depressed. So Linsey started the process all over again. 5 months later, after a full evaluation from a different psychologist, Linsey got a very different diagnosis.
I was in the 99th percentile for inattentive ADHD.
99.
Oh yeah, no, go big or go home. I really like to ace things.
But even after diagnosis, for many with ADHD, the battle to get proper care is just beginning.
I have now had 6 psychiatrists cancel on me.
I posted about my own experience in August after trying to explore medication as part of my treatment. After a lot of confusion, phone calls, and 5 canceled appointments,
I decide I'll just pay out of pocket and schedule another appointment with another psychiatrist. I send her my diagnostic report so we don't have to start from scratch. And she then cancels on me.
The psychiatrist said she can't accept my existing extensive diagnostic report and has to do her own diagnostic evaluation at a cost of hundreds of dollars.
It's not possible for patients to see specialists like me all the time. Many are going to be seeing primary care providers. They previously have been more comfortable in making a diagnosis of anxiety and depression than ADHD.
But even once you have a prescription, the challenge for those with ADHD is far from over. For Raquel, medication was an immediate game changer.
I remember just calling everybody in my close circle and saying, I cannot believe what is happening in my brain and the difference it's making in my life. And I know it doesn't work like that for everyone, but for me it did.
But she says getting that medication for her and her kids is sometimes impossible due to a shortage that started over 2 years ago.
It's been about 3 weeks since we've been trying to get medication. After the difficulty of actually getting the appointments, getting the prescriptions, which is already hard. And now I'm on the phone every day calling around. It's no, 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 we're out.
Then the regulations on some ADHD drugs add extra hurdles for patients.
The stimulant medicines are Class 2 controlled substances, which means they can't have refills on them, and they can generally be written mostly in 1 month supply. Every time that the prescription is written, the patient has to touch base with the clinician's office and get a new prescription.
They can't transfer pharmacy to pharmacy like another medication. I have to call the doctor, leave a message with the nurse, and then ask, can you send a new script to this new place? But by the time that process happens, someone else already got the bottle. And the next day I start the process all over again. It's maddening. It feels like Groundhog's Day.
And that prescription expires even if it wasn't filled.
Then you're going to need to call the doctor and get new ones called in. They might say, I'm sorry, but you need to actually come in.
Dr. Harsh Trivedi suggests patients check to see if their insurance includes a mail-away plan and contact the manufacturer.
Sometimes there are ways to access the medicine directly from the manufacturer, or they can tell you where supplies may exist.
Hi, I'm just calling again about the generic Vyvanse.
For now, Raquel is using her skills as an ADHD coach to help her family navigate this challenging time as they keep searching for meds.
Nice.
Meanwhile, Linsey is now seeing her new psychologist regularly for non-medication treatment and teaming up with me for weekly accountability meetings guided by a cognitive behavioral therapy workbook.
It's been so helpful, working through something with somebody else.
And I feel like having my weekly appointment with you keeps me on task and helps me to make the time to do it.
And while I still haven't found a psychiatrist, I have started working with ADHD coach Tracy Otsuka.
I'm helping you take action. We're going to work through obstacles together.
Who's helping me navigate that search and other aspects of life with ADHD.
If we're 5 minutes in and I'm crying.
Our thanks to Diane for that conversation.